Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into a case that starts with something so hopeful, a young woman's dream of becoming a doctor, and ends with, well, it ends with a death certificate that raises a ton of questions. This is the tragic story of Chandrika Patel.
So, was this just a horrible tragedy, or was there something much darker going on? That's really the heart of Chandrika Patel's story. It's this collision, between family honor and a young woman just trying to live her life. Let's start by looking at the timeline, because that's where things really start to feel off.
Okay, so look at this. On June 14th, Chandrika gets this amazing news about her medical exam. A huge cause for celebration, right? But then, just 11 days later, she's supposedly dead. And it's not until August that a death certificate even shows up in court. See what I mean? The timeline just doesn't make sense. And this discrepancy is what kicks off an investigation that uncovers a really dark secret.
So, a suspicious death. This whole thing gets blown open not by the police, but by her boyfriend, Haresh Chaudhary. He just had this gut feeling that something was terribly wrong and refused to believe she was just gone.
So, on June 21st, Harish does something really smart. He files what's called a habeas corpus petition. Now, that sounds super legalish, but all it really means is he's telling a court, hey, I think this person is being held illegally, and you need to make her family bring her to court to prove she's okay. It's a basic right to protect people from being unlawfully detained.
The court agrees and tells Chandrika's family they have to present her on June 27th. But when the day comes, they don't bring Chandrika. Instead, they just hand over a death certificate. Can you even imagine? You're expecting to see the person you love, and instead you get a piece of paper saying she died of a heart attack just 2 days earlier. Okay, so why was Harris so convinced they were lying? To really get that, we've got to rewind and look at how their relationship even started. It all started back in February, a pretty normal meeting at a bus stop. She's 18, he's 23. They hit it off, exchanged numbers, and fall in love pretty fast. And Harris was upfront with her. He was married but separated. They started making plans, dreaming about a future together. She was even balancing her medical studies with this new relationship. It really seemed like a modern love story, but it was about to crash head-on into a very old-school, very controlling family. And that brings us to family, honor, and control. See, Chandrika's father, Sindabahai Patel, wasn't just any dad. He was a former village head, a man with a lot of influence and some seriously strict, old-fashioned ideas about how his family should behave. And this is where you see the two worlds just colliding. On one side, you have Chandrika. She wants to be a doctor, she wants to pick her own husband, she wants freedom. But on the other side, you have her family's vision, an arranged marriage, total obedience, and above all, upholding the family's honor in the community. Her dreams weren't something to be proud of. To them, they were a threat. And the pressure just started building and building. First, they tried to force her into an arranged marriage with a relative. When that didn't work, they took her phone to cut her off from Harish. Then, they literally stopped her from going back to her studies. Her own uncle was taunting her, threatening her, saying she'd bring shame on them all. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It was a systematic campaign to break her will. So now we get to the escape and the betrayal. Can you blame her? Feeling completely trapped, Chandrika did the only thing she felt she could do. On June 4th, she and Harish just ran. They ran away together. And look, they weren't just kids running off. They were both adults. They went to court in Ahmedabad and got a legal live-in agreement. They did everything by the book. They truly believed the law was on their side, that this piece of paper would protect them. But it turns out her family's power went a lot further than the law. And here's where the system just completely fails her. On June 12th, the police track them down, clearly influenced by her powerful father. And just look at this breakdown. They had an official live-in agreement. The police ignored it. They were adults traveling legally. The police forcibly separated them. The police didn't even have a warrant, but they seized their phones and reset them. And worst of all, despite Chandrika expressing fear for her life, they returned her to the very family that was threatening her. Every single one of her rights was just trampled. This is the absolute turning point. They basically backed her into a corner. The police told her that if she didn't cooperate, if she didn't say she wanted to go home with her family, they would frame Haresh with fake cases and he would rot in jail. So to save the man she loved, she had to lie. She sealed her own fate with that lie. And this message, this is just chilling. On June 17th, she manages to send this to Haresh on Instagram. If I don't agree to the marriage, my family will kill me.
This message, sent in desperation, would end up becoming the crucial piece of evidence that brought the whole lie crashing down.
So now we get to the confession. Because once investigators had that Instagram message, they had leverage. They presented it to her uncle and cousin, and the story finally came out. They confessed to what really happened on that horrific night.
And what they confessed to, it wasn't a spontaneous act of anger. It was a cold-blooded, premeditated murder. The motive? They got the court notice for the habeas corpus hearing and panicked. They knew she would testify against them. So the plan, hatched by her father and uncle, was simple. If she won't obey, she has to die. They put sedatives in her milk, and then, at 1:30 in the morning, her own father, Sendabai, strangled her while she slept. To cover it up, they tried to stage it as a suicide by hanging her, then told everyone it was a heart attack so they could avoid an autopsy. Just unbelievable.
And think about the timing here. At 4 a.m., just a couple of hours after the murder, the family discovers the body. By 6 a.m., they've already held her funeral. They moved so fast to literally erase all the evidence before most of their own relatives even knew she was gone.
Okay, so this is a clear case of murder by the family. But they weren't the only ones responsible. This was a massive systems failure. So who really failed Chandrika? I mean, obviously her family failed her. They valued their twisted sense of patriarchal honor more than their own daughter's life. But what about the police? They completely sided with a powerful man over the actual rule of law and an adult woman's rights. And you have to ask, what about the society that creates this pressure cooker environment where daughters are expected to conform or face the consequences? This isn't just about one family. It's a societal failure where the very systems designed to protect people just don't. In the end, Chandrika's dream of becoming a doctor wasn't ended by a heart attack. It was extinguished by a toxic mix of ego, control, and a system that just looked the other way. And it leaves us with this really disturbing question to think about. When a family's honor is considered more valuable than a daughter's life, who really bears the guilt?